Welcome viewers to ICF Coach Parameters All-in-One Bio Derailment Guide, Gurjit Singh. In this video, I have tried to explain a derailment case in which I was associated with the coach measurements, and this accident had occurred on a zonal railway, and that was of a mail express train involving ICF coaches. This is the standard proforma we fill in case of carriage derailments, coach derailments, and these are the relevant columns. So serial number, date, train name, details of BPC, vehicle number, type of vehicle is most important, and carrying capacity. This is to be filled in as we have different types of coaches with a different type of springs required or springs fitted on it. So to verify the working height, we need to be very particular about the type of the coach and its carrying capacity. Then we have bill date, return date, and POH details. We move on to column 15, which deals with the wheel gauge in millimeter to be measured at 3 locations. In empty condition at a horizontal plane passing through the center of axle. White para 2.6.8 of IRCA part 4. Part 3 is for goods coaching, goods stock, and part 4 is for coaching stock. So the limit is 1600 plus 2 minus 1. So the gauge is either 1599 or 1600 or 1602. So if it varies at 3 points, that indicates a bent axle or improper disking. Then we have wheel diameter, and wheel diameter, as we all know, the shop turned diameter is 837 millimeter, and the minimum dia of coaching stock is 813 millimeter. So shop turn dia means any vehicle when turned out from the shop after a POH, the wheel dia should not be less than 837. That restriction is because in case of service due to wear and tear, it should not go below the condemnation limit of 813 millimeter. Then we have column 17, any indication axle or wheel having shifted on axle or bent axle. That is again detectable by measuring the wheel gauge at 3 points. Then we have wheel and axle face particulars. So this is required in case of axle failure, and these stamping particulars and all these are required only when there is a case of an axle breakage. We have observation after measuring the profile with the wheel defect gauge. Now, as per ICF coaching maintenance manual, the relevant para says inspection of wheel flange. The flanges on both sides of the wheel set are checked with the help of a profile gauge to measure the height and thickness of flanges. Accurate measurements of flange height and flange thickness is not possible with the profile gauge. It is therefore recommended to use a wheel profile gauge with which accurate measurements of flange height and flange thickness to extent of 0.1 millimeter can be made. So this is already mentioned in chapter 10, page 3 of 23. So the way we normally are given measurements is they give us a tire defective gauge and say yes, it is not passing, so it is okay. The matter doesn't end there. We have again in the same revised proforma, two types of measurements. In case of locomotive, we do check the flange thickness, the root wear, the flange height. But in case of coaching stock measurements and the wagon measurements, good stock and coaching stock, we are given a tie defective case. So this is a point when compared under the same covering letter. The parameter measuring system is different for locomotive and different for coaching and good stock. So this needs to be clarified and referred to for correction in similar with locomotive wheel measurements. Column 23, 24, 25 and 26 pertain to records in case of abnormalities observed in roller bearing and axle box failures. So we move on to the next column. This is the most important part of the proforma related to spring and spring gear. First column deals in with the condition of coil suspension spring, whether it's normal, fractured, if it is broken, whether it is fresh broken or having some old breaking marks. Next is condition of rubber spring, normal, cracked, including length of crack, and this pertains to LHB. Of course, I will make a separate video and presentation on LHB coach measurements. But however, as far as this column is concerned, normally we see that for leakage of pressure has to be checked. In case of leakage in the secondary spring, we need to check the leakage, its height. So the height for LHB is 287 to 292, while for ICF it's 255 to 260 mm. Then we move on to deflected height of coil spring after re-railing on a level and uncanted track. Now there is a lot of confusion. Once the readings become abrupt, there is always a complaint that the track is not level or this or that. So it is very important while taking the measurement, please do measure the cross level where the coach is placed for taking the measurements. And it is very easy nowadays in case of pits etc. we can correct the level by placing additional rubber pads, and we can correct the level to 0. So the level should be corrected to 0, and then the deflected height should be taken as I have marked in between the bottom of the top compensating ring and the top of bottom compensating ring. So this is the deflected height. So with entire packing, the total height should not increase more than 295 mm as I have shown over here. This is a caption of manual, and here this is the wing of the axle box. So from the bottom of wing to the gap of the safety strap, it should not be less than 40. These are the two interrelated dimensions which need to be carefully examined and recorded. So further, this crown clearance, bogie frame bolster clearance, body bogie frame clearance, etc. I have exclusively shown in the next slide to come. And the condition of rubber disc and bump stop for LHB, the clearance between lateral bump stop and the traction center is 25 mm plus 5 and minus 2, while clearance between longitudinal bump stop and traction center is 8 mm plus 5 and minus 2 is the tolerance. And then we have a height of bogie bolster base plate from rail level. Now this is very important, and this is for LHB. So it's 930 plus 6 minus 2 and less than or equal to 4 mm. Then height of bogie frame top from rail level is 925 plus 0 minus 5. So the bogie frame top and the rail level, the height is 925 to 920 millimeter. In this sheet I have shown the actual picture where the crown clearance is measured. So this is the crown clearance, we measure it from the top of the axle box to this part. So this is the crown clearance. Now for the type of coaches, its crown clearance is mentioned over here. So it's mostly for all these types, it's 45 plus minus 3. For SLR and SDC it's 48 plus minus 3. WFSC, WACCW, WCBAC it's 25 plus minus 3, and so on. So this is as per the latest correction slip in the ICF coaching manual. So this I have illustrated over here. Then we have the bogie frame to bolster clearance under column 32. So this is the place where we measure this parameter. So this is the bolster top and this is the bottom of the bogie frame, and this is 40 plus minus 5 under tear. And this is again from the top of the bogie frame to the bottom of the body. This clearance is known as body bogie frame clearance, and this is 70 plus minus 3 millimeter. This is the chart showing the testing parameters of AC coaches for RCF made coaches and as per RCF drawing. So here we have the type of coach, then here the tear weight of the coach, the normal payload, of course not of much importance as far as measurements are concerned. So whatever we have to note down are these parameters C, D, G, and that too under tear. So for each type of coach we have different type of readings. Some are common, some may be common, and this is the bogie frame bolster clearance, bogie body clearance, and then axle box spring height. This is under tear. So this is the working height of the spring, and these are the tolerances given as letters in small. Subscriptions are there. And then we have bolster and spring height under tear. Then we have crown clearance under tear. It's different for different coaches, varies little bit. Then we have the bogie bolster height, and this is the buffer height, whatever is given under tear and under crossweight. So generally for coaching stocks we do take the measurements which are under tear. Similarly, this chart also is for different type of coaches stock, and same parameters are given over here for different type of coaching stock. So these are available in the ICF coaching manual, and one can very easily have an access to it. However, I have tried to give it as a ready reference for the viewers. Under this column, condition of hanger. So this is the hanger come swing link, we call this long fellow, and sometimes if we tap with hand, this is found loose. This is the equalizing stay. This is in fact inverted, shown as inverted, and this is a anchor link. So here we have got nylon bushings, and we can just see sometimes there are cases that this equalizing stay does break and keep on dragging for some time, and then may lead to final derailment as well. And anchor link, sometimes the pin is missing, it's hanging, and with this it gives a great jolt if it is missing or if it is in hanging position or the pin has broken down. So these are two, one on this end and one on the other end. So to sum up, this is the hanger, this is the equalizing stay, and this is a anchor link. This is in ICF coaching. And then we have the condition of control arm, rubber element, and bore. So if the control arm bearing surface reaches a diameter of 230.5 mm, veers out by more than 0.5 mm, the control arm should be considered as worn out and it's rejected. So as I told earlier also, I will be making a separate video on LHB coaches, and there we will discuss elaborately. This part of damping system deals in with the condition of axle guide come dashboard, including oil level for ICF. So in this is in fact the top side of the dashboard. So to measure the oil level, this bolt is opened out and there is a hole. So this is the dipstick attached with the spring type of a wire, flexible wire, metallic, and then this is inserted in this hole, and the level of oil is checked on this dipstick. So this should not be less than 40 mm. This is hydraulic damper, and mostly these are found to be loose or bolts missing or just having functionless. So this condition should be checked whether it is working properly or not. Then this is the condition of anti-roll bar for LHV. So this is like this way an attachment. I have shown it separately with the different color to just illustrate it properly. And it is tied with a bolster like this way, and its soundness is checked, whether it is loose or tight or it's proper, is checked like that way. Next comes system of bogie rotation and clearances. So here we have condition of center pivot including verticality of the pivot pin for ICF. So we need to check the pivot pin whether it is vertical or it's bent, and condition of side bearer. Now this bottom plate is known as the bearing plate, and this is the bronze bearing piece. So its rejection limit is at 42. When this height reaches 42, it is said to be at rejection limit. Clearance between traction center and longitudinal, this I will give in next slide. Remarks regarding free movement of bolster and pivot and their condition. So this we need to look for uneven wear on the pin or pinhole, and the condition of grounding cables, wheel slip protection device. Yeah, so these are only connections which have to be seen. The ground wires are just connected with bolt system. And brake blocks, if less than 20 mm, they are to be replaced. This is from previous slide, just an elaborate picture of a little bump stop. So gauge and depth calipers, and the limit is L is 60 and T is 7. So this is 60, and this is the critical area. If this is worn out, replace if L is less than 30. So if this has gone to 30, then it is to be replaced. And here, if the limits of 7 mm and 60 mm are exceeded, then this requires to be replaced. Here also we have traction center rubber bush, and the critical area is shown over here. So action to perform is if this T is more than 6 mm, this requires replacement. Next comes buffer, coupler height to be taken again on level uncanted track after uncoupling. So the limits is from production unit, maximum height from rail level is 1105 and minimum is 1095, and workshops it's 1105 and 1090. Then we have condition of side buffers, working dead, drooping, entanglement. So entanglement, once we see these are entangled, so it can be known as entangled one. And the drooping means if the height is less, then we have the projection of the buffer is 635. Then in the next column we have details of broken parts, giving location with respect to point of mount, point of drop, whether the broken part has fallen before the point of drop or after the point of drop, whether it is a pre-fall or post-derailment fall, then any other defect. Now under this column we have an access to the parameter we required, citing the relation with the nature of the derailment. So there is no denial to any parameter, and when there is a dispute, that has to be referred to the mechanical engineer and the safety officer, because they are responsible. Safety officer, being a neutral department officer, he is responsible that both the track and mechanical measurements are taken jointly, while the departmental officers are responsible for ensuring the measurements are given. Then we have list of damages to coach due to accident and other observations which are considered relevant to the derailment need to be recorded jointly. Well, viewers, now let me discuss a case history of a derailment of an express train. So there were 10 coaches which had derailed without any part of mount, and the rails were found in broken condition, but all were fresh broken, and it was a derailment by the wheels derailing inside the inside rail, not outside the curve but inside the curve. So the train had stopped, and after a brief stop it started, and there was a sudden acceleration in the train which led to a stringing action on curvature, causing excessive lateral force on the inner rail of the curve by the inner wheels. So in the next slide we will see the derailed position and the track. This is the site plan of the derailment site. This is the engine side, and this is a curve. And see, all the vehicles have derailed inside the curvature. There is a double line section. This is one line, this is the other line. And this B5 was the first to derail, and S1 following B5. Well, these are the track parameters. Don't find anything abnormal with the track. Burst signs are very good, as well as the cross level. So hardly anything to discuss here. Now, this is the coach measurement of B5, the first rail, and just see from the tabulation the spring height under tear condition. So all the red font indicate which are out of the recommended tolerance of working at, which is 264 to 275 mm. So if we see minutely, see this trolley, both the axles are having springs of lesser height than on the right side of the same trolley. And if we sum up both side deflection, see the difference. It's 19 plus 26 mm, around 45 mm. So 45 mm, these are higher and these are lower by 45 mm. This is again, because these are on the lower side, this is again reflected in the buffer height C. Here it is 1065 and here it is 1085. Means this is higher, this is lower. These are having stiff springs, these are having, so to say, weak springs. So this side is deflected down and this is on the higher side, which is again reflected with the buffer height. So these are all interrelated. So see here, we can see with the bolster also. Here see with the axle crown clearances. So all are going out of the tolerances. So that's why I always say that while visualizing the axle box, one can say the springs are okay or not. So as we have seen here, the crown clearance is 32 to 38 mm. So very nicely one can conclude how much is 32 to 40 or 38 mm. So if the clearance is more or less, it can be visually said, yes, this coach has some sort of a problem with the springs. So That's why when we say, अरे आँख से देख के बता सकते हैं, तो this is the only reason when one can say, yes, visually you can examine and you can identify that whether the springs will respond to your required working height or not. Well, friends, now let's summarize what we have discussed. First was the buffer height, the deflected height of springs, axle box, crown clearance, bolster bogie clearance, bogie body frame clearance, side bearer bronze piece, side bearer plate thickness, center pivot, wheel diameter, wheel gauge, dashpot oil level, and finally the tire defects. Thanks for watching, viewers. Please like, subscribe, comment. Thanks.